more about how uh, in education there are times where students' identities and even teachers' identities are not honored because of the hegemonic structures of society and how language has played a part in that. My PhD is in English composition and applied linguistics. So my program was really about TESOL more than anything. It switched over to applied linguistics, but it was about teaching English to speakers of other languages. And so that's a really big thing that we want to make sure that we do, that we honor their backgrounds, their heritage, etc. And so the more I started learning about those things, the more that I started to say, okay, this, the way that we have been doing things and the way that we have been telling people who have varied dialects, and the things that we have been telling our students and telling ourselves that we have to turn these things off may not be healthy. So again, it initially came from my training, and my PhD training is where the idea of code switching kind of came from. But we'll talk about this a little bit later, because we were talking about it right before this started. But code switching is really this idea of duality. So it's where you have one persona that you present for a specific audience, and then you have another persona that you present for another audience. And so you have to be able to switch between those two. So while that's a great skill to be able to have, because anything that you can do outside of yourself, where you can kind of step out and see other aspects of things, is great. It can be a little bit detrimental because sometimes it's hard to switch it on and off, and having the understanding about when to switch it on and off is difficult at times too.
So you talk about the linguistics, right? Are we talking
Hmm.
about the African American vernacular, aka Ebonics, which I
Hmm.
think is very interesting now that all of a sudden that's become like this new wording or phrasing, which
Hmm.
is just, it's crazy
Hmm.
to me, right? Like everybody wants to flip it around and reverse it. But we're talking about how to go from, as you said, as your mama said, not being your
Hmm.
friend, to having that
Hmm.
quote unquote white voice, which I
Hmm.
honestly cannot
Hmm.
stand when people say,
Hmm.
"Oh, you sound white today."
Right.
Like,
Hmm.
how do I sound
Exactly.
white? Because I'm using proper like King's English?
Hmm.
Yes, I am. Or it's not enough of the neck roll that I know for me, I have to
Hmm.
really contain myself because I'm really
Hmm.
quick to give you a side eye, an eyebrow, and throw a hell of a bunch of shade.
Okay.
Um,
Hmm. Hmm. And
but
nothing wrong with that.
it's not. But then it's also, the time and the place. So at
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
point, when do we as people, African
Hmm.
Americans, get to
Hmm.
a place that we're not going to be exhausted from having to turn on and off who we are like a
Hmm.
switch?
So code switching, like I mentioned, code switching is something that is awesome. It's an awesome tool to have. But what's even better is something called code meshing. So if you haven't heard of code switching means, again, duality. You're switching on and off. Code meshing still honors your identity, or who you are, your upbringing, your background, your heritage, your ethnicity. It honors all of those things, as well as having that awareness of who your audience is. And so in more recent times, within the past maybe decade or something like that, maybe even more than that, definitely more than that, code meshing has been a term that has not been talked about as much in education. It hasn't been talked about as much in the corporate America, in the workforce, but you see it all the time. If you think back to when you interviewed with whomever you work for,
Yeah.
or even if you did like an admissions, college admissions interview or something to that effect, the main thing that that interviewer wants is they want to get a sense of who you are. They don't
Right.
necessarily, they've already read all of your accolades on paper. They've already seen your transcripts. They've already seen what you can actually do, but they want to get a sense of how well you're going to work within the structure of the company, within the structure of the people who are going to be your direct reports, the other colleagues or co-workers that you have, stuff like that. So it's important to always show who you are in that, but you have to kind of remember too who your audience is. So
Mhm.
while the neck roll might be fine in a specific instance if a question is asked and they're like, okay, tell me about your childhood, and you go, okay, let me tell you about this, so all of those kind of things, like
Right.
there's a level of comfort that
Right.
someone else can see in that. And if
Mhm.
if you don't get a job as as related to that, it's really more so because that specific person didn't know
Mhm.
how to understand you as an individual, and that they're not really looking for diversity in the first place.
Mm.
So
And we
so
talk a
yeah,
lot
kind of thing like
about the diversity and inclusion trend that's
that.
like popping up all of a sudden, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's become like this mainstream initiative for most companies, especially those who have like white companies that are like, hey, we need more X, Y, and Z. But
Hmm.
when we start looking at just the back end of what these companies look like, board of directors, their leadership still looks
Hmm.
Caucasianry on
Right.
dry
Hmm.
balls. Like, how
Hmm.
authentically diverse are we really trying to get? So
Right.
I know there's been data that has shown that for most minorities, the reason why they're not making into C suites or executive level positions because they're still stuck either on that basic, first 9 to 5 job, or they go to the mid level and then that's where they cap. And it's not necessarily that they cap for whatever reason, but
Hmm.
they have just not gotten to that point where do you honestly need to start kind of switching your tone, switching your demeanor so you can go into that? Or are you those type of people like how we were that we pivoted and said, you know what? You don't want to take me up, so I'm going out. And better yet,
Hmm.
I'm being hella petty. I'm about to build a damn house around you. So
Hmm.
you know this is what cultural innovation looks like. It's not about having a black face using stock photos on your portfolio saying, look, I'm really diverse because I got a black and Asian, but saying, no,
Hmm.
no, no, Sway, I have this thought process that is very different from your standard boomer and X's.
Hmm.
And this is
Hmm.
how you need to start taking things into
Hmm.
just a new level, a new reason, and just a new season. So,
Just and if you aren't moving up in your position, trust and believe it's not due to your linguistic choices. It's
mm,
not due to your background, your ethnicity. It's not due to any of those things. It's due to this still underlying current and sometimes overtly, blatant racism. That's really what it is. That's all it is.
exactly.
It has nothing to do with that. And so for us to have to think that we have to pivot, like you said, or that we have to divorce, deny, or dishonor who we came from in order to get ahead, that's not kosher. Like that's definitely
Mhm.
not something that we need to be thinking in terms of. Again, a lot of boomers, as you said, and a lot of early X's. I'm an X, but I'm kind of a later X. There was some research that had been done about people who that there was a period, or there was a what do you call it, a generation between X and millennials called Zennials. And so
Yeah.
there's only like maybe 4 years in there. And so I actually would fall into the Zennials. So like I'm
So,
on the cusp of X, but I'm moving into millennial
so what's
territory.
the Zennial a year? Just so I'm curious. I'm hoping
It
I'm in the
was,
Zennial millennials.
gosh, I think it was 77 to right around 81,
Oh damn, well
something
I'm
like
out.
that. Seven, yes, somewhere. Don't quote me on that. I have to look it up again, but I know I
Right.
fell in it. Yeah, I'm 78, so yeah, I
Damn.
knew I was there. Hmm.
Black don't crack. Okay. So ladies, once again, if y'all do not see what
Yeah,
I'm looking at, wink. Got it.
yeah, right.
um, okay, so now we get into just linguistics, right? So you've mentioned it a
Hmm.
couple of times, and for you being a very successful brother,
Hmm.
what does that look like to you? Like, how often do you catch yourself having a code switch? Now, granted, you're a
Hmm.
professor, so maybe this might be a little bit different for you compared to those who work in corporate America, government, mainstream, whatever. But based off of research and what you have taught your students, for the male perspective, the black male perspective,
Hmm. Hmm.
what's like the emotional implication that really takes a toll for y'all when it comes to actually having to turn it on and turn it off?
Hmm. The issue for black men, I mean, and even anybody that has to do that, I won't kind of relegate it to black men, but we are definitely a part of that.
Yeah.
um is that it becomes more difficult the more you divorce yourself from who you are, or you divorce yourself from your authentic self, the more difficult it is to get back to it. So
Mm,
think about it as if like you're in a boat on a shore. You're right there on the shore, so you can easily kind of get out of the boat and go back to the shore if you need to. But the longer you stay in the boat, the more the current will take you out, to the point that
mm,
you have to do more to get back to that. um and that has happened to me on a couple of occasions where I've had to switch so much that when I'm around my friends, I'm in professor mode. I'm still in that
mm.
zone, and it's like they're like, okay, well, we get what you're saying, but like relax.
Right.
Don't be
Chill,
so
bro.
uptight, yeah, chill, yeah,
Right.
like you tripping, dog, so it's like, okay, let me get out of that, let me switch back over to this. um but that again, it's difficult. It's difficult to kind of navigate that, and it's difficult to
Mm.
say, okay, you kind of wake up after you've done it so long, you wake up, one day, and you go, okay, wait a minute, who am I again? Like,
Oh
who?
yeah.
Yeah, and then you begin to reverse judge. So the people who you're closest to, the people you grew up with, the people who still use terms like ax instead of ask,
Oh.
or or people who say conversate, instead of
Oh.
converse, stuff like that. While you understand exactly where they're coming from, you begin to judge because you've switched into this
Yep.
other, this other mode so much that you're just like, I can't believe you said, just kind of like, the way you did just now, you were like,
Yep.
so yeah,
Yeah.
you switched out of like, oh no, yeah, so yeah,
And I
come back
think
to the shore, come back.
right, please. I mean, I need
Mhm.
crystal right water and all of that. So then what do we talk about? So then we have this side, right? This is our 0 to 10. Drake. Now we're going all the way left to those who are saying, I'm gonna be as authentic as I am. So if that means I'm using the
Mhm.
ask, the conversate, all of that, take me as I am, I don't give a bleep. What
Mhm.
do we tell those individuals who are still saying, look, they gonna hire me because I'm me and that's what they like? Neck
Mhm.
rolls, side eyes, shade thrown and all.
Yeah.
So Dr. D, what do
There's
we tell
so there's a fine line there that you have to kind of draw.
them?
Not that you have to divorce completely who you are, but you may have to turn the volume down just a little bit. So if you're I live in a brownstone, and I'm on the top floor of the brownstone. So there are times of the day when my neighbor downstairs will play music. So he'll play music at certain times when he knows I'm awake, when he knows that, I may not be working. It's usually on the weekends and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But he has that awareness of my schedule, kind of how I work, etc. And so it's really about awareness. The entire thing is about awareness. So if you know you're going into a job situation where the company is a little bit stuffy, or the company is a little more conservative, you may just have to turn it down just a little bit, but you're not completely divorcing yourself. Code switching is turning it off. Like, let me turn it
Mm,
off completely, and then I'll do something else, or I'll be something else. But you may have to mesh. You may have to say, okay, let me not be complete. Let me not give you all of the neck rolls. Let me not give you all of the side eyes, but like I can do one or two in here, just to still
yeah.
kind of stay true to who I am. The other
Right.
thing about that is knowing your audience. And that's the one thing that I teach my students a lot. You have to know your audience. When you're writing, I always ask them they do peer review. So on their peer review sheets, I always ask, okay, who's your audience here?
Mm,
And so when they tell me who their audience is, if their audience are their peers, when I'm evaluating their work, I'm not looking at it from the perspective of a professor. I'm looking at it from the perspective of, this is they're writing to their peers. So I need to be on that level and understand that when they use these words, when they say it in this phrase, when they use, I just learned last semester what no cap meant.
I'm sorry, what is
And
that? I don't know. And I've officially aged myself when I just
yeah,
asked that
so
question. I don't
So
know what that
you
means.
did you ever use the term like no lie, like for real, no lie? This is what like you
Yeah.
ever use that? That's what no cap is. No cap is
Oh,
the same, is equivalent to that. Yeah.
AKA
So no,
sampling from us.
exactly. No lie. This is what it is. But so I just learned it wasn't, I kept hearing like, okay, no cap, no cap. And I was like, what is that? And I finally looked it up and I was like, that's what it means. Okay. So like if they're writing and they're using that vernacular, they're using those terms, I go, okay, this is the audience that they're writing to. So this would be appropriate for that audience. But a lot of times my students come from places where they were taught very prescriptively so that there's a right and a wrong way to do something,
Yeah.
and so they still lock into that, oh well, I can't use this term because of this, I can't use this term. But I was like, it really matters who your audience is. If you have a general audience, then no, you shouldn't use that term because everybody's not going to receive the rhetoric that you're producing
Mhm.
because of that. So it's really about awareness. That's what a lot of this is about, awareness. And if you're trying to get a job at a place where you have to divorce, deny, or dishonor who you came from in an effort to get ahead or an effort to make money, etc. How long are you honestly going to be happy there?
Mm. We
So
we talk a lot about just being able to not just do your due diligence when it comes to companies, but
mhm,
also trying to figure out, does your personal values mesh with their corporate
mhm,
values? So when I look
absolutely.
at your Googles, your
Mhm,
Microsofts.
mhm,
A cousin, one of my cousins works for Microsoft and she loves it. And I asked her one day, I said, what about Microsoft that you love about it so much? Outside of
mhm,
it looks like low key culty. She was like, she was like, it's not that. She was like, because their corporate values mesh with my personal values. She was
mhm,
like,
mhm,
a big thing about their little mini division and sector, because they're all very diverse. I think her
mhm,
entire division, there's like one of, it's literally like the Rainbow Coalition of Bennington. Like there's one of each
mhm,
something in her
mhm,
division. And they
mhm,
all get to do flexibility when it comes to working from home. And they all live across the country. And then they meet up like once or twice a year to just
mhm,
kind of go back and get back into that swing of things. But I asked her, I said, what about Microsoft was attractive to you?
mhm,
And she was like, it was the corporate values that mesh with my personal values. Like
mhm,
I
mhm.
want a company, I want to be able to work for a company that sees me for me, not
Yes,
just my
yes.
color, not for what I
Mhm,
can bring, but because I'm who I am and they see value in that and they know that I
mhm.
am an asset and I'm not a liability.
Right, right, exactly. And that's what it's very important for us to do that. I think our upward mobility really depends on us doing research beforehand. Um,
Mm,
and again, checking to see what the values of that company that we want to work for are, and if they align with what our values are, what our core,
yeah.
what who we are at our core. And then if those align, then nothing short of you just not being knowledgeable about that or not being a good fit, um
Mm,
as far as your skill set for that company,
right.
will stop you from being a part of that company. When I interviewed for Anne Arundel last year, I went into it. I mean, I didn't do a lot of research on the college. I did some just to kind of see what it was about and look at some of their values, etc. But I purposely didn't try to go into that with like textbook answers for what I thought some of the questions were going to be. I just went in as myself. I said, okay, here I am. This is who I am. They asked me questions. I answered them. I joked a lot about certain things because that's kind of what I do when I'm speaking. Even in my classes, I like to make jokes and I like to have fun. So I did that, and they fell in love with all of that. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I didn't have to compromise who I was in any of that because everything else kind of shone through, including my personality. So I think
Okay.
that's important. That's important for all of us. And you have to think about that. You have to think about, okay, who am I? Like that's one of the first things too. Like, who am I and what are my values? And
Mm,
then you're able to say, okay, now I can kind of look for something that's going to align with that. And that's where you get kind of the difference between careers and jobs. If you just
Mm,
want you just want to make a money, to make some money, that's cool. Go work anywhere,
right.
and do what you need to just to get that paper, But if you actually want something that you love to do and something that you want to grow in and something that you want to have sustainability with, then you start doing all of that research.
Mm. So we got on the topic of cultural
Hmm.
invalidation. And I'm
Hmm.
talking about
Hmm.
these are the identity thefts, these are the identity threats when it comes to being so authentic that a lot of times it either becomes a turnoff or it
Hmm.
ends up turning us into someone that we're really not. So I'm curious to learn your perspective on cultural invalidation, especially when we start talking about just our culture, right? So,
Hmm.
for those who are just really following us, our executive coaching firm, we coach for the culture. Like, that's our tagline, but
Hmm.
we're dead ass serious. Like, that's what we do. We're
Hmm.
serious about taking those who look like us, sound like us, to get into C-suite positions and executive level positions because we know that they deserve access and they're not getting the proper resources. So, with
Hmm.
all that being said, there is a very fine line between the code switching, the code meshing, and now we're getting into the cultural invalidation, which then
Hmm.
starts falling into the micro, macro, and
Macro. Hmm.
minuscule, right?
Hmm.
Aggression that a lot of us deal with time in and time out. But before we get into the aggressions, I want to start talking about the invalidation. So, what is your perspective on cultural invalidation, and what does that look like for us, and how do we get over these humps and curves and all of that stuff?
Um, I think that one of the reasons why our culture is invalidated is because we don't have or we don't take as much pride and stock in our culture sometimes. And so
Mm,
we give people permission to look down on us. We give people permission to not see us in these same spaces. We give people permission to not view us as viable in these other spaces. I'll give you an example. And I've for years I've told people this, but I have conversations with students and even some of my own peers sometimes, where they say stuff like, okay, I'm going to go into work today. And if so and so says something to me, I'm going to go off. If so and so does this, I'm going to go off. That's it,
mm,
because I can go from 0 to 100 real quick. Like they get into all this
yep.
vibrato. And it's like, why are you premeditating a
Mm,
situation? Like you're going into it already looking for something. They could
yeah.
speak to you, and in your mind, since you're already ready, you're already on 10.
Yep.
Like you're
Yep.
like, as soon as they say something, I'm gonna go off. And then that's justification. So it's like there are ways again that we have to understand our audience and we have to know, okay, what spaces are we in? And like, how do I get my point across? And how do
Mm,
I not dishonor who I am, but still let them know that this is not appropriate. Uh this is not something that I'm going to stand for, et
mm,
cetera, et cetera. There have been I love confrontation. So I tell people that all the time. They're like, oh, everybody's like, oh, I hate confrontation. No, I love confrontation. Love it. And confrontation doesn't have to be belligerent. It doesn't have to be asinine. It doesn't have to be that.
mm,
It can be, okay, I didn't particularly agree with the way that you said this, or I need to understand what your perspective was behind what you said here, because I don't allow that sort of speak, towards me, or I don't allow that. And I've had to tell supervisors that, like, listen, I hear what you're saying, but that was very disrespectful how you handle how you said that to me. I don't take that lightly, and I think that that's something that you need to fix, or something that we need to work on moving forward, because I don't allow that.
And what's
So
their
I think
wait? So what's their response when you say stuff like that? Do they automatically get the shocked? I want to speak to your manager, Karens and Kens, like, oh, Darius, how dare you?
um no. Well, and I think it's because of my stature too.
Okay.
Um, I'm a little I'm straightforward, but I'm
Mhm.
straightforward in a non-threatening kind of way, but I have a very threatening appearance. I'm 6'3" and I'm a bigger guy. So I
Mm,
can go and
right.
say something to somebody and they're like, okay, wait, hold on. you know,
Yep.
the Homer Simpson into the bushes,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like, wait,
Right.
wait, wait. So, but I'm doing yeah, but I'm doing it in a way that is I didn't raise my voice. I didn't I didn't get angry. I didn't punch the wall. I didn't do, a lot of these things because I understand the environment in which I'm in. And so as far as invalidation, for us, we have to be able to we have to be able to call ourselves to the carpet, with
Mm,
certain things. Like, okay, look, culturally, like, guys, if we're doing this for the culture is more than just you.
right.
It's everybody. So when you make a move, you're moving, we're moving as a unit, and
Yes.
so they're going to look at the way that you responded to that situation and generalize that this is how everybody does. So I think it's we have to do something on our end, and then from there, then we can start calling other people to the carpet. We can start saying, okay, no, that's not cool. What you just, or the way that you just said that.
Mm,
But it's interesting though, within this diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism kind of world that we're living in right now, it's funny to watch our Caucasian counterparts like really have to think about all of the stuff that they're saying, especially if they're in meetings with mixed company. Like, it's really interesting. Sometimes I'll just sit there and I'll go, okay, let's
hmm
see. Let's see where this goes.
Right.
Let's
I'll
see how this
wait.
plays out. Yeah, let's see how this plays out. Yeah, I have another colleague who started with me, and we're on like a committee together, and it is so funny because like we're texting each other like in the meeting while the meeting is going on. It's like, okay, watch this, let's see what's gonna happen here, and the way they say things, like they're like, well, okay, I don't mean this, and I don't mean
Right.
that, and we're like, okay, yeah, clean it up, clean it
Right.
up.
Before you get canceled.
Yeah, clean it up, clean it up. Yeah. So,
So that even goes into like cancer and culture, right? You
mhm,
know,
mhm,
a girlfriend of mine recently just posted on IG like the question, like, where did cancel culture come from? Has it
mhm,
always been there? Is it just new words slapped on an old pig? Or is it like this is really something new? Because I guess I'm always going to assume it's the millennials that did it. We said, what, enough
yeah,
is enough. We're not about to tolerate a
mhm,
bunch of this bull, and we about to just shut you down officially.
mhm.
Now, granted,
Yeah,
half of y'all still
it
ain't
didn't.
canceled spells, but
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
get
and
your cut.
because if you're gonna cancel somebody, like, have a valid reason for doing it and
Mm.
stick with it. Like, and cancel culture is not new. It's the term is new, but we've been canceling people for years. But we called it boycotts.
Yep.
Back in the '60s, we called it,
Mm-hmm.
sit-ins.
It
In
is.
the '70s, we called it a lot of different things, but it's always been around. But to the nth degree of what it is, it's more aggressively reactive than it was
Mhm.
in past, and that's what I think it is. So, like, okay, cancel culture, we're going to say we're going to cancel you, and then these are all of the things that we are going to do to cancel you. We're going to talk about your mama, we're going to pick on your dog, we're going to
Right.
stop buying your products, we're going to tell everybody to not do this, we're going to hold rallies outside and say, cancel this, we're going to do all of these aggressive sort of things versus,
Right.
okay, we don't like what you're doing, we're gonna
Mm,
we're gonna do this in peace, a peaceful demonstration, peaceful protest, in order to get you to change. So,
facts. I think that's
mhm,
it's very interesting, especially because of course you went to Winston-Salem State, but you're also an alumni of North Carolina A&T. So for the Aggie
I
Bells that are
am.
listening,
Mhm.
shout out to Bennett College for Women and also North Carolina A&T. Um,
That's
you
right,
know,
Aggie pride.
That's right. When we talk about the sit-ins, we're looking
Mhm,
at the infamous four, the Aggie Four, which, by the
mhm,
way, there was a bunch of bells there that no one ever wants to give us credit because we were sitting right next to y'all dusty four, still getting the holes, still getting the locks,
mhm,
and all of that things. But
mhm,
one thing that we do want to make very clear is that even when it comes down to just canceling culture, I think what comes with that needs to be the change of perspective. So if you're going to be
mhm,
canceled, understand the emotional totality that comes with being canceled, right?
mhm,
So everybody, as of recently, perfect example, let's look at the Kardashian West family. Everybody's been trying to cancel
mhm,
Kanye for a very long time, but the emotional totality that came with that is that Kanye still has never really healed from the loss of his mother. You
There you
know,
go.
he
Yeah,
has
yeah.
a lot of that has stemmed from him not having the one woman that has always been his ride or die and his rock. And because of that,
Mhm,
it kind of went into this ebb and flow emotional roller coaster of him
mhm,
just
mhm,
doing stuff, and then him having to be diagnosed as bipolar and not taking his medication,
mhm,
and
mhm.
all of these things that everybody now is like, well, Kanye's tripping, he's tripping. It's like, is he, or is he just emotionally to a point that he's at his breaking point? So
Yeah.
for black
And like, what's
men,
your end game? Yeah, like, what's your end game? That's the whole thing about cancel culture. Like, yeah, what is that?
right,
You know,
right,
and
because I'm like,
it,
y'all still bought Donda, and I know that that album was expensive, like 10K for
mhm,
Donda. So I'm
mhm,
like, y'all still bought it. But like Cosby, I know everyone canceled Cosby. Like
mhm,
everyone stopped watching all the reboots. You know, ain't nobody
mhm,
bought a pudding pack in who knows how long. But then you have R. Kelly. I
mhm,
know a ton
mhm,
of people that said, "Oh yeah, we cancel him in public," but I'm like, dude, why is he still on your playlist? Why
mhm,
is Robert?
mhm.
Why y'all still two stepping and at the
Right.
skating rink like ain't nothing
Mhm.
happened? I'm like, yeah. Well, while he's making this video, he out here pissing on girls with plastic bags.
That's right.
Yep,
That's right. That's
right,
right. All of that.
but-
All of that.
right.
Absolutely.
So so I want to get your input, even for
Mhm,
just the emotional side and the emotional totality that comes with being canceled, or just
mhm.
being a black man having to be canceled. What would that necessarily look like for them?
Um, it depends a lot on what your bread and butter is. If you're canceled uh, because of something that you said, and the intent behind what you said was not what it was, um, then that's something that you could potentially kind of bounce back from, because we all say things and do things that are not um popular, or we kind of are in the moment. We're human. um but it just depends on the intent, a lot behind that. And so in Kanye's instance, like you said, you have to be able to kind of step outside of you. And that's what cancel culture a lot of the time is. It's self-serving. It's,
Mm,
I feel better about me because I'm going to cancel you, or I'm with a group of people that is going to cancel you. So I'm standing with the masses and I feel good about myself because I'm doing that. But you have to step
right.
out and say, okay, what's going on with this person? What's really happening? Why would this person say that? So when I see things or I hear things that are really um odd, or they're offensive, it's like, okay, was this person saying this based on just ignorance, or was this person saying this because this is truly how they feel? If they truly feel this way, then okay, then yes, I'm going to completely step away from you and anything that you're about. But if it's, I was in the moment and this happened and this was a catalyst that led to this, that led to that,
Mm,
then I go, okay, let's hold on, let's run
right.
this back and see, how this works. But it does take an emotional toll, because being a black man, in America is already an emotional, roller coaster every day. I work at a university that is predominantly white. And so I have to, there's a certain way that I want to carry myself on campus. But I don't want to carry myself in such a way that the other brothers that are on campus that see me don't recognize me as a black man.
Mm,
Like they can look at me and we do the, we still do the nod, like, hey, what's
right.
up? They still recognize that, and so
Yeah.
and again, that's hell within itself, trying to navigate those spaces. But then to be canceled on top of that is just even more of a blow, and it's just like kick a man while he's down kind of thing. And it's like, okay, I'm already down. Like, I'm already down being a black man in America, I'm
Right.
already down because I'm looked at as a threat. I'm already down because, I'm at the grocery store and I walk by and somebody's like, okay, I don't know, what's going to happen. So I'm already down because of that, because I can't feel comfortable. I can't make other people feel comfortable, and I'm doing the same thing that you're doing. But to continue to do that, to continue to kick me is too much. I'm not in the process of throwing people away, um, personally. But at the same time, I can say, okay, you were wrong in that, and I can't support that, you know. While
Mm,
this may be good, I can't support what you did here. That's, and it's just about calling people to the carpet, which goes back to what I was saying about we have to kind of be accountable for ourselves, and we have to make sure that we're doing what we need to do for the culture
mm.
so that other people won't invalidate us.
And I think also what comes with that is the emotional accountability that for
Mhm,
us in the culture, in the tribe, in the community, need to be able to have enough integrity and be
mhm,
brazen enough to be able to start checking our people one on one.
mhm,
And it
mhm,
does start with our individual tribe members saying, look,
mhm,
like you a little wild, we might need to tone it back, or nah, we don't do that
mhm,
here, or we
mhm,
don't do that,
mhm,
period.
mhm,
I think a lot of times that we get so comfortable with those around us that we're either too afraid because we don't want to mess up the relationship, or we don't want to ruin a good thing, quote unquote,
mhm, mhm.
that we don't speak up on some of those things that honestly are just, they're uncouth.
Yeah,
They're just
exactly.
not right. They're not to a place of, well, I'm not trying to change you. I'm just trying to give you enlightenment and give you some type of understanding and refinement
Mhm,
so you realize that you could probably do this here behind closed doors. But when we step out of this house and when we step into the public eye, there's some things that you're going to have to bring in a
mhm.
little bit,
Yep,
tighten
turn
up,
it down.
straighten
Yeah,
out, right?
turn it down a
Turn
little
up
bit.
because
Exactly.
they
Mhm,
don't know you yet. And
mhm,
once they get
mhm,
to know you, then you can start speaking sideways and do some outlandish stuff. But until
mhm,
then, and until you
mhm,
are comfortable, and they're honestly, because at this point, it's what they're comfortable with accepting. Because I
mhm,
can't
mhm.
change our skin tone. We can't
Exactly.
change who we are
Mhm,
just at the core of who we are.
mhm,
But
mhm.
until they are comfortable, and for those who are like, well, who is the they? The whites, the
Yeah.
Caucasians,
Mhm,
until they are comfortable with who we are as people and what we bring to the
mhm.
table,
Yeah,
some
yeah.
things are going to have to be slightly scripted. It
Yeah,
sucks. I
yeah,
don't like it.
yeah.
I hate it. But that's the name of the game, especially if you are trying to, rise up the ranks. Like
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes you got to play the game just to get in the door. But once you win it, then it's like, all
Mhm,
right, all gloves off. I can do whatever the heck I
mhm.
want now because I gonna got it. I've done what I'm supposed to
Yeah.
do. Now I can start bringing my sisters and my brothers up with me. But what
Mhm,
also comes
mhm.
with that is that social responsibility of saying, all
Yeah.
right, don't show your
Mhm.
black ass in front of these folks, or
Yeah.
make sure
Mhm,
that you got it right, you got it tight, because you
mhm,
can't afford for them to be looking at just the two of us and thinking that's an all of us thing. Because we
mhm,
automatically
mhm.
know one person shows their ass and we looking at them like, oh, man, you
Everybody does this. Yep.
everybody.
And
Right.
yeah,
Like
exactly. Like it's like
y'all.
when you hear the newscast and you hear that somebody shot somebody else or whatever, and you're like, okay, please, please don't let it be us. Please don't let it
Right.
be us. And then, yeah,
Every night.
and then you're like, damn, yeah. And somebody,
Right.
okay,
You're like,
well,
ooh, please hold, all right,
hmm
school shooting,
hmm
white, white,
yeah,
white.
please, yeah, please
Black
don't
kid.
let it
You're
be us.
like,
Please don't let it be
really?
us. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
God, yeah.
But
And
at
it's the
some
same, yeah, and it's that, yeah, it's absolutely that. Everything that you just said, I completely agree with. And it's at the core of a lot of that is awareness. Like I don't like to be around a lot of people who are not self-aware. Like you have to be aware of who you are. You have to be aware of the way that you function, and then you also have to be aware of where you are as well.
mm,
And there are people who I know that I'm just like really, like we're in a restaurant, like, and it's not a restaurant that you go pick your food up at the front. There are people bringing us food out here. So if a song comes on, it's okay to vibe to the song, everybody. It's okay to sing a little bit to the song, but please don't get up and start twerking in the middle of the restaurant and do the splits and then go, yeah, that's it. Yeah, you like, okay, yeah, and
right.
throwing the air guns in the air,
Yes.
like, okay, like
Pew,
let's
pew,
not do
pew,
all, yeah,
pew.
let's not do all of that. Like, enjoy it, that's fine,
Right,
but come on, guys, like dial it back just a little bit for right now.
right,
Still be
right.
you, but you know how to tone it down the same way we
Mhm.
tone things down when you go to church.
Yep.
The same, and we,
Yeah.
if you're black and you go to a black church, you know to tone a few things down at church, you know. So
Right.
the same way you're doing it in these other, Caucasian white spaces, like tone it down a little bit, but don't turn yourself off, but
Right.
just kind of, tone it down just a little bit, and then like you said, get into the door, and then you can kind of relax in it a little bit more. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I would say from my own personal experience, it took me a very long time to get relaxed to be who
Hmm.
I am now. Like what you're
Hmm.
seeing now is the most authentic of who Ayana Coach Ham is,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
I've done a thing, right? So I
Hmm.
have kind of moved up and around, my company, my corporation. And it's one of those things I'm like, my work ethic. And once you know my work ethic, that's another thing, right? Like you got to show and prove. It's
Hmm. Yeah,
no just,
exactly,
well, I do
exactly.
one or two, consistently
Hmm.
showing up. You're the first one in, last one out. You're the one
Hmm.
that is very articulate in emails. Like you are literally the first one to raise their hand when everybody else is looking at the floor. You're able to do all of these things, knowing that at some point in time, you can then start to be lax with tone, lax with slang, or better yet, you can throw a little shade at this point. You got some
Hmm.
years in, you got some skin in the game that now you're like, nah, sis, I ain't about to do that. And you could be okay and comfortable enough around the vanillas that literally they'll
Hmm.
be like, oh yeah, Brody's been here X, Y, and Z years. So she's the best of the game, but trust and believe, we know you don't holler at her until 8:45 until she gets her second cup of coffee in her. Because if not,
Hmm.
she's gonna go off
Hmm.
and be like, yup, you know the deal. That
Hmm.
it's
Right.
it comes with the territory of show up, show out, do what
Hmm.
you've came here to do, but
Hmm.
also realize that, especially if you are a minority in a all white office or all white division, you don't have any room for error. I know a
Yeah.
lot of people usually try and fight me on that word. Every time I say it, they're like, nah, that's not true. I'm like, it's very true. It's
Hmm.
very,
Yeah.
very true. I said, what
Yeah,
happens is
you become the standard at that
yes,
point. And so yeah, you have to, again, it's about knowing your environment. You know that there are people that are white, they have you under a microscope. And
yep,
so again, while you don't want to divorce who you are at your core from that, you want to mesh some of that, but you definitely have to say, okay, here's where I am. Here's how far I can take it with this person. Here's how far I can take it with this group of people.
yeah,
But and then here's how far I can take it with this person. I can completely relax, at this point. But yeah, so
yeah. And it comes with just knowing the players. And you have
hmm,
to
yeah,
do your
yeah.
research. And once you're comfortable in your job and your position,
Hmm.
as you work or just really work your way around your company, you'll
Hmm.
know exactly who is going to be an ally, who's going
Hmm.
to be a sponsor, and who also could be a potential enemy. It's sad to
Yeah,
say, but I'm like, we're gonna call a spade a spade. It's like
mhm,
not everyone that claims allyship is going to be rooting for you.
yeah,
And just
exactly, exactly.
because, yeah, and just because they are all about pro black, Black Lives Matter, they got the flags on the front yard.
Hmm.
Um, if you're still surrounded by the same people that look like you, sound like you're not really an ally. You're not really a
Hmm.
sponsor. You're not bringing
Hmm.
other thoughts,
Hmm.
minds, perspectives into the conversation or even just the dialogue where you can be enlightened enough to
Hmm.
then say, all right, I really am starting to become or understanding what these lives are meaning and what it looks like for them,
Hmm.
not from
Hmm.
what, media is portraying, but just having a very personalized understanding. So it
Yeah, because
comes
nobody
down,
really asks the questions, or you wear the shirts, and like you said, you have the signs in your yard that say Black Lives Matter.
yeah,
We never really bring to task these people and say, okay, what is it about Black lives that you think matters, or why
mm,
is it that you support this? And some of the answers are really interesting. I have asked a lot of people in academia that, and they know, they get it because they work with a lot of them work with diverse populations, so they understand it a little bit more. But sometimes you go into the go up the street and you see somebody with a sign and you're like, okay, what does that mean to you? What exactly
right,
does that mean? So it's interesting sometimes to see the looks like, I'm not really sure what
right,
what it is. Yeah.
right. I'm like, so is it trendy? Because if it's
Hmm.
trendy,
Hmm.
great. So are
Yeah.
these new days that just drops. But
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
It is. It's trendy. That's exactly what it is. Yep.
Right. And at some point, lives should not be a trend. They just shouldn't.
Right. Right.
Good
Yep.
point.
You're absolutely right. Nope. Nope. Not at all. Not at all.
So, Dr. D, I want to thank you for taking this time.
Mhm.
We have definitely covered a lot. We have gotten down to some nitty gritty, gloves are off conversation.
Mhm.
If people want to look for you, follow you, reach out to you on their own for questions, where can they find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, so it's at the bottom of the screen there, Darius M. Curitan on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram. My Instagram handle, it's a casual Instagram. So you'll see plenty of selfies of me and just like out places and stuff like that. But it's clothes minded. So 2Ks, KKLOTHESMINDED. So feel free to follow me there. My Instagram is open, so feel free to follow me there. I don't post anything super risque on that. So
I know a couple of females over here on Wisdom are like, damn it, damn it, damn it.
yeah, nothing super risque there. Yeah, so no.
I
The
mean,
most risque is might be a gym picture. Maybe that's it, but no, nothing
I
crazy.
mean, it's a 6'3" brother with a beard. So y'all go ahead and let your imagination run with that. Okay.
Right.
As for your girl, if you have not subscribed already to the YouTube channel of Coach Ham Chronicles, please make sure that you go ahead, subscribe, hit that notification. We actually will be back on tonight with another guest. Apparently, I'm hitting all the birds together today. So I want to thank Dr. D for all this time, these gems, this just amazing opportunity to just sit in and soak up all of your knowledge. Before that, is there anything else that you want to tell our folks before we roll?
No, I hope that you invite me back. I would love to come back and just be in on other conversations. This was a lot of fun. So
Absolutely.
right.
I'm all for it. So all right, y'all. So until then, peace.
That's ISO. Rack it up, I got